This is Gemara Shavuos Daf Mem Aleph, and we're holding on Mem Amid Beis, about 12 lines from the bottom at the two dots, as we quote the next case in the Mishnah, Mana li biyadcha, Mana li biyadcha, and he responds, Ein lecha biyadi, Potter, the classical Kaifer Hakol, he is Potter. Why? Because there's no admission at all. Says the Gemara, and once again, we like to dedicate all the learning as lezchot refuah shalema for Tinok Mrim Ahuva b'soich sha'ar Chayle Yisrael. Omar Rav Nachman teaches Rav Nachman umashbi and Isai. It's true that there's not going to be the classical shvuah, but says Rav Nachman umashbi and Isai shvuas hesis. We do make a shvuas hesis, which we'll see what that is. My taima, says the Gemara, Chazaka inan tevelim kin yeshlo. There's no one who yeshlei alav. No one makes a chazaka. No makes a chazaka. There is a chazaka that no one makes a taina if they didn't owe any money. So of course these are the two counter fighting chazaka is on one hand, chazaka inan to me is panav, as we'll say. Other Abba says, well, no. Chazaka in the meis panav de bal kaiva. No one's going to deny someone they lent him money. Says the Gemara, and this is really the bottom workings in Mirza Hashem. Says the Gemara, you're right, but he's just delaying. He's just trying to evade him. Savar, he thinks that money, and then I'll be able to pay him. So we have these two differences. On one hand, no one would deny someone entirely. On the other hand, no one would taina for no reason. And therefore we create this thing called the Shavuos hesis. Says Martida, bring your item, Rav Yidibarav, and Amarav Chista. HaKoiver b'milva kasher leidos. If someone denies alone, he's still kasher leidos. But if someone denies a pikadon, he's pasal leidos. He is pasal li-eidos. So obviously, the reason that he's kasher leidos is because we don't think he's really lying. He's just a shtamute, he's just pushing him off. Rav Chaviva masni ha-seifa. Rav Chavia teaches Rav Nachman Zin on the Seifa. What's the Seifa? 2 lines to the bottom. Mana libi adcha amar lai, hein yes lemach, hein yes I owe you money. Lemachar amar lai, he says, okay, so Taneli, pay up. And then he says, I paid you already. Nisatavlach. What's halacha? Potter. Vam Rav Nachman, it's true you're Potter, but mashbi and oisai shvuas hesis. He makes a shvuas hesis. Comments the Gemara, mandamasni a reisha. Then Kol Shekain, in the case of the Sefer where he originally admitted only later, denies entirely. But as we turn over to Mem Aleph Amar Aleph, today's daf, says the Gemara, but man demasni ha-Sefer, the one that learned that this din of Shavuos hesis from Nachman comes from the Sefer, will respond that hachahu deika derara demamayna. Only in the Sefer is there a derara demamayna, there's some involvement, and therefore we create a Shavuos hesis. Avlas, for the first case, the like a derara demamayna, lo, there's no involvement at all. He's fully denying it entirely, and therefore there's going to be no shvuah at all. Says the Gemara, okay, so we're explaining that there's going to be the shvuah, as is rabbinically created. But ask the Gemara in the third line, Ma'ika bein shvuah deraisa, l'shvuah derabanan. What is the difference? We've been learning till now Shvuah Deraisa might do a mix, as the top Rashi points out. Shvuah Derabanan is one that we just said of Shvuah says is of Rav Nachman. What's the difference? Says now you know the difference will be Mibach b'Shvuah. The difference is going to be, are you able to flip the Shvuah around? B'Deraisa l'mefachinan Shvuah. B'Derabanan mifachinan. B'Derabanan you're able to swip the Shvuah around. As Rashi says, what does that mean in the second line? He shava, then he can do that. Says the Gemara, Ravashi argues that even with the rice, you're able to do such. The difference is going to be where Bezin is allowed to descend upon the property, go down to the property and collect. We go down to his property. Well, Rav Yosi, Rav Yosi holds the Amar. What are we going to say? Tetanan. We say that you can't take them because we don't want there to be fighting. Rav Yossi Omer, no, not only midrabanan but gezel gamor. V'amer Rav Chisda gezel gamor midivrei. L'mayna afkamina lo yitzah b'dayanim if you take up b'dayanim. So says the Gemara. So according to Rav Yossi, that even on a derabanan level, it's going to be shaykh. Concludes the Gemara ma'ika bein deraisa derabanan. The difference is going to be the din of kinegdai. When the other guy, the defendant, is a chashed, what do we say now? What's the halacha? Then we flip it around. But dirabanan, if he's chashed, takantei b'dirabanan. The Shavuos is a takana, therefore takanta loy avdinan. We don't create such. Says the Gemara, that's going to be the chalik according to Rav Yossi. Continues the Gemara, but wait, the next step. According to Rabbanan, what do we do if we don't go down into his property? Says the Gemara, you know what we do? We put him into chayrim. Rav Ashi, 1 second. Hi, nakte bekoivsei. If they put someone in chayrim, until he swears or pays, it's like one who holds a man by his kofsa, by his cluster, like a cluster of dates hanging from a tree, which of course is lashon saginah, referring to the private areas of a man who Elamai Avdinan says the Gemara, okay, you don't want to put him to chayrim, what else are you gonna do? Amar le mishamtina le ad zman. We put him into chayrim until, says the Gemara, zman nagdei, until the time of Malchus comes. V'nagdina le, and then we give him Malchus v'shavkina le, and then we leave him. Meaning we don't leave him in chayrim forever, just a means to encourage the shvuah. Omar Rav Papa. So that concludes really part 1 of the shiur. Multiple steps in figuring out what do we do with the Shavuos versus the Shavuos Daraisa, etc. Omar Rav Papa. Hi man, the apik shtara al chavri. Says Rav Papa, one who produces a star against his friend, Omar lei, and says to him, shtara parua. Says, no, that star I paid you already. Amrina le lavkol kamina chazan your power. Zil shlim. You still have to go and pay. He has a star that you owe him money. But if he says, swear for me that it's not been paid, and then I'll pay you. You're right. So they're both in the right. On one hand, we make him swear. On the other hand, we make him pay. Says Rav Ashi, how is this different than a case where someone says that the entire star is unpaid and he goes and he's paygim the star. When he admits it's partially paid, he can't use that star anymore. Over there, we in Bezdin will taina for him. Over here, we're going to say, go and pay. And if he goes and he demands a shvuah, and he says, swear for me, Amrina, you're right, Zil ishtabale, go swear for him. And says the Gemara, but what about the next step? But he served the Rabbananu, then let me shabinale, then they don't have to swear. What? Just because you're a Talmud Chacham, you let him rip away people's clothing? The guy's climbing, you owe him money. How do you not have to swear? Ella says, you're right. What it means is we don't involve ourselves with the Talmud Chacham, we don't make him swear, and therefore he's not going to be able, they won't be able to collect. Says the Gemara, the next case of the Mishnah, the last narrow line. Simple. They can tell him, I paid, but they're not here. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Now we learn to the Mishnah on the Ibn them Haim, yes, Lamachar, Latinelli, give it to me this Antiv Lachi says he claimed he paid Potter. But over here, Kivan the Tave Be'edim, command us to Be'edim over here. Over here in this case, since he demanded payment in the case of Edim, and he admitted to be paying in front of Edim, that's like command us to Be'edim Dami. He makes it as if the halva was in front of Edim. And yet, what happens when he later comes along and says, I paid you? Vikatani Potter. Continues the Gemara, Tiyofta de Ravasi. You're right. Sakashan Ravasi. As we turn over to Memal from Abayz, answers and deflects and articulates the Gemara, Amr Lacha Ravasi. You know what Ravasi is going to tell you? Ano, the top line of Memal from Abayz. Ano, ki amri, when I say, Achadim me'i kara isve be'edim. Delay l'didei. Hemnei, where the Malva originally lent money in front of Edim. He didn't trust him. Whereas over here, over here he believed him, so it's not going to be the same case. Says the Gemara, Lashon Nasik and Lashon Ravasi Masni Hachi Amar Avidam Ravasi, a very similar like in Ikadi Amri. Hamavas Gleir Edim and Isala Parabedim, and Mamar Alta Frani Al Bedim, but if you say you have to be back in front of Edim, then it's Arla Parabedim. Nobody can tell him. So now Tanan, the same Kashman, the next day he said to him, excuse me, and he responds right away on the first day, then the next day, why? Says the Gemara, Nachmal Tifta der Shmuel, Shmuel Tanai, this. So now it's not the same terror. It's over here. Shmuel comes along and he says the Machlekes Tanayim Detanya. Ha'edim Helvisicha Detanya. Be'edim Helvisicha. If someone says they're lending you money in front of Edim, Be'edim Parali, therefore pay me in front of Edim. Oy or Yitain, Oy Avi Raya Shanasan, pay me or give me a Raya that you paid. Ravi Ben Meseira, Meryacha, Laim Lepraticha, Bevnei Blani, Blani, Vachlam, Medina Sayam. I paid in front of Blani, and they went. Le Medina Sayam, just like Vidben Meseira. Says the Gemara, Parich Ravacha. Ravacha says, no. Mimai Dibishas Alvakai. How do you know we're talking about the time of Alva? Double Bishas Taviyakai. Vachi Kamer Le Lavid Vasicha Beide Mayoli Leparani. Aval Bishas Alva, maybe different Akol Yibichayim is not a good teretz. So Amar Abhapi, Mishmei de Rava, 4 lines from the white lines. Helchasam, Avas Ler Beidim, Sarlapar Beidim. For Abba Mishmei de Rava, Amar Avas Ler Beidim, Sarlapar Beidim. So they have a machlaikis, so you have to pay back Beidim. Bavim Aral Tefrenu, Ella Beidim. Then, Sarlapar Beidim. Vim Aral Pratich, but they plenty of Blani, Vachlam Dina Sayam. Then Neman, then they are believed. Says the Gemara, we're now going to have a bunch of related cases, as is evident by the siman that the Gemara quotes right now. But let's start some of the cases. We're on the 3rd wide line. When you pay me back in front of Reuven and Shimon, and what happened? They didn't pay back in front of Reuven and Shimon. He paid back in front of 2 stam people. Amar Abaye Babe Betray. Says Abaye, he told him to pay in front of 2 people. And Babe Betray Pare. It's true he said Reuven and Shimon, but maybe he says Abaye, that's just a manifestation of 2 people. And the Maisi, you did such. Amar Le Rava. Rava responds back to Abaye. Lachi Kamar Babe Reuven and Shimon. Why did he say Reuven and Shimon? So he doesn't push them off. Says the Gemara, therefore it's not good that he paid in front of Stam 2 people. Another case. When you pay me back in front of 2 people who teach Mishnayos, delay. He went back and he paid in between themselves privately. The money were then lost. He said to Rav Nachman, yes, he gave the money. And I said to him, let it be a by begotten to me, let it be by me until 2 witnesses who teach Mishnah come by. Amar Lei says Ram Nachman, Kiv the Kamoidim Devadi Shekaltin Mine, once he was moided that he took it from him, Parayan Ma'alya Have. That's a form of Pirayan, and therefore he did what he has to do. So he Amar Lei Kiyume Tanai. And if you say that he has to fulfill the stipulation, Zilas Naye, go and bring the money. And therefore we are ones that can be paid on in front of. We'll start from here. B'siyata Dishmaya.